Welcome to Interdependent Study, our podcast where we engage in the learning and unlearning work for collective liberation. I'm Damien.
And I'm Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us today. Each week we'll bring something new to the table and discuss our thoughts and feelings about it through the lenses of who we are and where we can go for a more just society.
We want Interdependent Study to be a space where we're always learning with one another. And Aaron, you're up this week.
Yes.
What are you bringing to the table today?
Well, we have a live studio audience again. Just kidding. That's just sound effects.
Yes.
But we're back in our normal setting.
Yes.
And I am bringing an article from The Forge called Our Prescription for Winning, Give Organizers What They Need to Thrive. And it was written by Alicia Jay, Cara Park, and Rebecca Gorena, and published about a month ago in January 2026. It's a brilliant analysis of the conditions that organizers are facing across the country and how the critiques that we often hear fall short of addressing the conditions, which would therefore fall short of creating more effective organizing.
Yeah.
And they've got three main points about the forces that are at play behind the individual efforts of organizers, which are, quote, 1, a lack of accessible and comprehensive movement infrastructure that values and invests in organizers as skilled workers. 2, an inherited culture of organizing that encourages personal sacrifice and a relentless pace as evidence of commitment to the struggle, often above long-term strategy, and at the cost of burnout. And 3, the very systemic external conditions of patriarchal and racialized capitalism and a lack of benefits and social safety nets that we're working to shift. So these are clear, specific issues that organizers are facing across the country.
Yes.
That are also elements of things that they're working to change.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So let's get into it. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I appreciated this so much, and I think you're right. It's a really great analysis of the critiques that exist there, and just sort of more broadly about the challenges and needs of organizers right now, which I just kind of loved. And so, and I really think that this kind of analysis is important given the times we live in, right? Like every day there's some new crisis, some new challenge, and we need organizers and the incredible work that they do, both in the day-to-day as part of organizations that they work with, but as also in terms of our movements and in times of crisis. And it was especially awesome to learn more about the All Due Respect organization and the work that they do to advocate and fight for the needs of community organizers. After Alicia, Cara, and Rebecca share a little bit about All Due Respect in this piece, they say this about organizers, quote, community organizers are the ones who knock doors, listen to stories, build deep relationships, put events together, manage data, execute campaigns both in person and digitally, and serve as the ear to the ground of what communities need and want. Their work is in service of bringing together people to demonstrate for policy change on issues like healthcare access, reproductive care and abortion access for all, and pathways to citizenship for new Americans. This is a big, hard, vital job. And I don't know, when I read that, I was like, that was brilliant. When you lay it out like that, when you put it out like that, it's hard to deny the impact of organizers and the incredible work that they do. And again, I just appreciated the analysis that Alicia, Cara, and Rebecca offer in this piece. And I know we'll get more into this conversation, but it's so critical to the success of organizing work in the long run.
Yeah, and the quote you just mentioned outlining all those critical things that organizers do is important. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
They're asked to hold a lot and do a lot. And that list doesn't capture the emotional labor of it and the toll that takes too.
Great point.
And sometimes there's that secondary trauma element where you're not necessarily experiencing the trauma directly.
Yep.
Sometimes you are, but you're not necessarily, but you're picking up that kind of secondary weight of that trauma.
Absolutely.
And that's its own emotional toll.
Absolutely. And work.
Yeah, and I think to do this for the long haul, you have to be called to do it because it's so much to hold.
Yeah.
And to expand on that point, a little later in the article, they talk more about the survey that you just mentioned, and they talk about the tension between this work and trying to make a living.
Yeah.
They say, quote, in the same study, we found that a majority of organizers, 71%, had less than 5 years of experience in the field, with only 16% having more than 7 years of experience. This suggests a trend of professionals leaving the field after 5 years. One organizer shared, if you want to have higher pay or a living wage, then you have to move up in the hierarchy in an organization. which is frustrating because that's not necessarily the work I want to be doing. There aren't a lot of models of folks who get to stay in community organizing long term with a long term living wage because people are pushed either out or up. And I think this is a very real issue for organizers, and it feels real across a lot of different kinds of work.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a so-called entry-level person, it's hard to do that with the kinds of salaries and benefits that those positions get because they're quote-unquote entry-level and they get valued as such. And that's where the budget gets limited because it's thought of as entry-level work. So we can give you entry-level pay.
Right.
Which is, a misnomer in so many ways, especially when we get back to that list of what organizers do.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a shame if people want to be doing this work for the long term that they can't make it work financially and with benefits because they don't cover enough.
Yeah,
they don't do enough.
It's hard to live off of that. And there's only so much that your passion, your excitement, your energy, your commitment can do if you can't make ends meet with the salary and the benefits or lack thereof that something like this offers.
Yeah, my passion and commitment doesn't pay my rent.
It can't,
and
unfortunately.
That's it's going to lead to some other issues.
Absolutely. So I love that. I also appreciated their work in this piece to highlight some of the forces that are at play and you highlighted these at the start, these things that are impacting how individual organizers show up and also how these forces are impacting how effective organizers can be in their work. They do a really great job here of framing their analysis around what decision makers and funders can and should do about this and how they don't place all of this at the feet of organizers, which I love. And they name why that's the case. They say, quote, across these reports and our own research, we see a lot of agreement. We all believe organizing needs to be better, but evidence shows there's a right way and a wrong way to make this happen. The call for increased rigor is currently framed as the need to drive organizers harder, demanding higher outputs and outcomes. But as our research and the reports above echo, rigor should focus on training and investment, not increased pressure on an already starved class of workers. We cannot reasonably focus on organizers' performance without shining a light on the poor working conditions they face and the broader structures that exacerbate those conditions. These are the symptoms of a field that's been chronically underfunded and a profession that's frequently characterized as entry-level, despite requiring a great deal of skill and strategy, which, echoes your point there.
Yeah.
And so, again, I appreciate their work to name this and to place the call to action in the hands of organizations and leaders and funders, the people with money. How can we put more attention and resources into training organizers in the fundamentals of the craft of organizing and in understanding power analyses as it relates to organizing and the systems that are at work, and in learning about effective base building and mapping strategies. Like the list goes on, but their point here is that while we can all agree that organizers need this education and training, organization leaders and funders have to play a larger role and be the solution to the issue here.
Yeah, you can't ask people to make stuff up out of thin air.
Absolutely.
To say, well, you need to do X, Y, Z better. It's like, well, how do we make that happen?
Absolutely.
Is there training that can be done?
Right.
It's such a crucial point. And there are some real challenges that aren't recognized by people who just say we need more rigor. And it reminds me a little bit of some of the generational differences I see in the workplace between people who are from an older school than I am and the folks who are coming in now and are younger than me, and some of the tension even between myself and those folks and then between them and the people who are from an older school than me.
Yes.
And, some of that feels really relevant in how this seems to be playing out.
Absolutely. That's a great sort of a metaphor there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to notice the parallels, between this article and my own experience, even though I'm not directly working in organizing.
Yeah.
When they go on to talk about the working conditions that exist for a so-called entry-level position, as we've talked about, they say, quote, the challenges these organizers face are real. A mismatch between the rapidly rising cost of living and the salaries and benefits of their jobs. A lack of onboarding, training, and mentoring in jobs that require juggling multiple complex roles and relationships, and workloads that are too often unmanageable, disconnected from the needs of the base they're tasked with organizing, all in pursuit of a strategy in which they have little say. And that says so much about how this work is so necessary.
Yes.
and then hugely underfunded and undervalued.
Right.
And they quote an organizer from New York City a little bit later in the article who says, quote, "We are told our work is important, but the conditions make me feel disposable." And it feels like a huge gap.
Yeah.
These demands for rigor and constant work and burnout, as you mentioned, are connected to people feeling disposable.
Yeah.
Because the conditions they have to work in to make a difference in the world make them feel disposable.
Yeah. And that broke my heart.
Yeah, it's a direct contradiction of the world that so many organizations and organizers themselves are trying to build. So it flies in the face almost of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
By saying, well, to do this, you got to sacrifice.
Yeah. Work yourself to the ground.
Yeah, and not get paid enough to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in that.
Yeah. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate the connection to sort of your lived experiences, despite it being in the work that you do, despite it being not organizing work. There's some real connection point there, but also, yeah, that quote from that New York City organizer just broke my heart, like making me feel disposable. Like, oh no, like that should be, we should never want any organizer to say something like that and to feel that way. But when you lay all that out, it's clear how and why they could get there and how they can feel that way.
Yeah.
You mentioned burnout. One of the great things that they do in this piece is analyze the challenge that is burnout, because burnout is real. Burnout is something that I think many folks experience in their lifetimes, sometimes more than once. And it's no surprise, especially given that quote. I mean, it's something that organizers feel. And so the authors say this about burnout, quote, "From our research with organizers across the country, we've learned that building a stronger leadership and talent pipeline in organizing fundamentally depends on making sure organizers can stay in the field. To do this, we ought to ensure organizers aren't encountering such high levels of burnout that staying in organizing positions would significantly jeopardize their physical, emotional, and mental health. We conducted national research in 2022, shortly after thousands of organizers had left the field during the first Trump administration, a time of constant urgency, defense, and defeats. At that time, we found that 9 in 10 current organizers had experienced burnout. And even more alarming, 3 in 4 had thought about leaving the field. Meanwhile, the directors we interviewed emphasized the difficulty in finding, hiring, and retaining trained organizers, especially those who come from and represent the communities they work with." And there's a lot there. Like the 9 in 10 organizers experiencing burnout, it was just like a huge whoa moment for me, but makes sense in the context of everything that we shared here. And they referenced that first Trump administration and the constant barrage of things. And it just made me think like, oh gosh, that's what we're living through right now.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated the naming of burnout as a real condition and experience of organizers and how it's something that has to be addressed as part of this larger effort to improve the conditions for organizers and just for the overall effectiveness of organizing.
Yeah, and there's so much that I think people are facing right now as we talk about what's happening with the second Trump administration that in a lot of ways is more emboldened, which I think weighs on people a lot differently. There's a lot in the first version of this, and there's a lot in this one, and it feels maybe a little bit different.
Yes, it absolutely is different.
So yeah, that's the conditions, not just of how we work, but the conditions we're working in. Just gesturing vaguely in the air is a lot.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about application.
Okay.
How do we apply this article to our day-to-day lives and work? My application comes from the last paragraph of this article because I think it's a call to action for a lot of us. They say, quote, "If we believe organizing is the answer to the overlapping crises we are facing, the question remains, what does it take to win? We believe it takes creating conditions for organizers to do their best work, to grow in their roles and remain in their jobs long enough to build powerful bases. We believe better labor standards are the most vital component of those conditions. When organizers can make ends meet, when they can grow and develop in their roles and maintain a pace of work that ensures they don't burn out, our organizations and movements are better set up to win, and win in ways that don't leave the people doing the work behind." I think there's an element of this that is the call to action for me that is maybe a little bit abstract.
Yeah.
But so many people are looking at what they can do in this moment of rising fascism and right-wing movements. And I think that in this article, they're laying out an argument for how to contribute to movements that get us closer to liberation.
Yes.
So a lot of people are looking at cutting subscription services or spending less at big box stores that seem to mostly support the Trump regime, or at least willing to play ball with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're cutting costs in those places, or maybe you cut your Netflix subscription or you cut your Amazon Prime subscription, is there an organization that you can send money to who has a mission you believe in, who's doing important work right now,
Yes.
that helps fund this work in a different way?
Yeah.
And I think that those are small things that we can do, but especially in this moment where we're looking at cutting back on things that are directly opposed to our values, how do we then take that money and invest it in things that are directly aligned with our values?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a thing that a lot of us could maybe do, and not in huge amount. I'm not asking people to donate huge portions of their income, but
Right.
if you were paying $20 to Netflix that you're not doing anymore, can you send that $20 to an organization?
Absolutely. I love that.
Maybe so.
Well, that just reminds me of several conversations we've had here about getting in where you fit in. And that's a part. It may be that you can't be on the front line, join an organization to become an organizer, but you could certainly do that if especially if you're already cutting the ties in those places.
Yeah.
So I love that. My application comes from something that they say towards the end of this piece, because I just thought it was a really important summary statement about the goal I think we all want and need for our movements and for organizers and for this fight for social justice and collective liberation. So they say, quote, "We all want a movement filled with skilled organizers. Organizers need time to develop, and that means investing in them through intentional training and ongoing mentorship, valuing their labor, and when we can, compensating them in ways that allow them to take care of themselves and their loved ones. It means offering jobs that enable organizers to pace themselves and providing guidance to navigate the mental and emotional toll organizing can take." And I love that. You mentioned the emotional toll of that, going door to door, getting to know your neighbors, getting to know the people who are affected. That takes an emotional toll. And so it just reminds me that and makes clear how important organizing is and how critically important work organizers do.
Yeah.
It always has been, but it's especially true in the times we are living in right now. And so investing in and developing skilled organizers so that they have the full capacity and resources to do what they need to do and can also live their lives, right? I think is only going to impact the power and outcomes of our movements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I don't have to worry about paying rent on top of worrying about how I get help to this person I talked
Yes.
to earlier today, it's a whole other level of being able to address real concerns
Yes.
in my community.
Absolutely. That's powerful.
All right, well, let's talk about homework. What do we want to do to continue our learning and unlearning work beyond our conversation today? I'd like to read a couple of articles that were referenced earlier in the piece. They're actually connected to the 3 points I made when I first started talking.
Oh, yeah.
And so they are "What Will It Take for the Resistance to Win" by Salma Arias and published on Our Future, and a Substack post by Margaret Killjoy called "The Sky is Falling, We've Got This." So, yeah, I mentioned those were connected to the 3 points at the very top.
Yeah.
They both seemed really interesting
Yeah.
and helpful analysis in how we can win and also how ultimately people have the power, and so we've also got this.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. My homework is related. I want to check out some of the reports and organizations that are referenced in this piece. So they quote it from a May 2023 publication from People's Action, as well as a report from Future Currents titled "Fighting Shape: An Assessment of U.S. Organizing." And so I'd love to check those out. And then at the top of this, I mentioned All Due Respect, that organization. So I'd love to check their work out and see what we can learn from all the work that they're doing to improve labor conditions for community organizers. I think one or more of the authors of this piece are involved in that organization.
They all are.
They all are. Look at that. So I just really enjoyed this piece and what they're trying to do. And so, if we can learn more from the organization directly, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Damien, you're up next time. what do you bring to the table in our next episode?
Yeah, well, get excited, my friend. I'm going to bring the 6th and final conversation from the Abolitionist Lessons from the Prison Belt series.
Excellent.
From Inquest.
Excellent.
We've been reading this for the past couple of months, few months, and so it's time to finish this series. Yes. You and those things.
Got my sound effects.
Yes. All right, so the series is comprised of, as a reminder, the series is comprised of these incredible conversations between Lydia Pellet-Hobbs, Judah Shept, Craig Gilmore, and Ruth Wilson Gilmore on their reflections and lessons of on organizing and fighting for the end of mass incarceration. And so the conversation that we're going to read for next week is called Finding the Opportunity in Crisis. It was published late last summer. And here are the first couple of sentences of how they described this conversation. Quote, "To close, we reflect on the preparatory work that allows organizations to work with people coming to grips with a crisis, providing both useful awareness and practical things to do with their energy. Everyone doing political work, especially our opponents, is doing this." And so, yeah, I love this when I thought about it because I thought it connects really well to this, what we just talked about today.
Yep.
But I'm also just really excited for us to finish this series and reflect on the whole thing and, talk about it with you next time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a great series, so I'm glad we're going to cap it off and read through all of these. Inquest has also been publishing a lot of cool stuff over the last few months as we've been reading this.
Yes.
That makes me think I haven't wanted to bring those things because we have this series that we keep coming back to. So there'll be some more stuff that I think we'll bring from Inquest in the near future because they've continued to publish really interesting things about abolition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
All right. Well, with that, we want to thank you for joining us today. You know what I'm going to ask you to do here, but in case you forgot, please follow, leave a rating or review, share our podcast with the people in your life. Follow us on social media, including Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Check us out on YouTube. Sign up and join us on Patreon to get notified about any new things we've got going on behind the scenes.
Yes, thank you for listening. And remember, it's not about us, but it is about all of us. We'll talk to you next week.